Hello, everybody. Aloha, Ohio gozaimasu, and bonjour to all our friends in Hawaii, Japan, Canada, the United States, and let's not forget all of our fans in Tanzania, which may or may not be above zero. But of course, we hope to change that. And if you are our fan in Tanzania, please absolutely comment. We'd love to know how you got to us. Today, Trevor and I are going to talk about a very important subject, which really in many ways determines much of the success, if you will, in your life and work, and that is motivation and willpower and how to boost them. Now, they are somewhat separate terms, motivation and willpower. Willpower is a little bit more about enduring things, but I think they are very much related, your willpower and your motivation, because one is kind of, the motivation to get things in motion. And I see willpower more as like how just to, endure the struggle through that. Even sometimes if it's pleasurable things, like you only have so much energy, and energy is a foundational element to having good motivation. And we're also going to talk. So we're going to talk about, which I think I should highlight early on. One of the things that got me thinking about this more recently was something that had been occurring in my family with regard to motivation, a low motivation. But also there was a study, and a shout out to Dave Asprey, who is a well-known YouTuber and kind of biohacker, I guess. I don't know if he uses that term. I think Dave, is he out of California, I think? Interesting guy. I think he made a boatload of money in the tech scene. And then now he's become more of a sort of biohacker and longevity guy. And I saw a very interesting podcast by him through YouTube. And he was citing some research, which Trevor and I have gone on to verify that this does actually happen. And actually, I had started doing it myself. And that research is that creatine, which people always think of, I think, as something for weightlifters, like bodybuilders. It increases ATP, which I guess is ultimately helps you with your energy. But now they've discovered, so there are studies out of Bonn in Germany, and was it Frontiers in Nutrition out of university in China. That was the latter being a meta-analysis. I think the Bonn was more an original study. And they're talking about how creatine can boost your energy and boost your motivation and your willpower. So I think this is, not only that, here's the extra added bonus, folks. It can boost your IQ. So I'm really impressed by this. And the difference is that some people have been taking this for a while, but it's dose dependent. You want to be careful, because I don't know what effects ultimately it has on your kidneys in a deleterious fashion if you take too much. But if you take too little, it doesn't have any appreciable effect on boosting your IQ and your motivation. But there is a pretty significant effect there. And certainly, if you listen to Dave Asprey, he's super pumped about this. Take that for what it's worth. But I think the fact that he did reference these studies is noteworthy. Anyway, so that's what we're going to talk about today. But Trevor, I'm going to open by asking you a question to kind of put you on the spot, and I'll do the same with myself because I haven't pre-thought this. Can you remember a time in your life, maybe recently or long ago, even though, of course, you're only 25 years old? We know that. Can you think in your long 25 years of life or more about a time or the time when you were most motivated? You must have been pretty motivated to get into the Mayberry Institute of Technology.
Yes, yes. There were definitely times when I was sort of applying for schools that, you want to get everything done, you want to get through it all. But I would say actually probably the ones where I was most motivated was related more to athletics. So I was on the swim team, and I think trying to make it into kind of the sectionals, like the regional before the state competition, and I had to get a certain time in order to do that. And so and it was in butterfly, so which is a pretty kind of strenuous sport. Of the swim strokes, like you have to have a certain amount of athleticism to be able to kind of push yourself and get yourself flat enough that you can propel yourself through the water and not sort of be plowing through the water kind of like at an angle. So I think it's definitely motivating to and probably those other times as well. I know for when I was finishing my PhD thesis, we actually put up we had a race to finishing thing where like every week we had to write down the number of pages we had sort of like completed between myself and two other grad students that were all kind of getting ready to graduate at about the same time. So
did you win? Did you win the race?
Well, we all graduated successfully, so I think we all won.
Yes, there you go.
But it was less the outcome and more kind of the social pressure, right? And I think that's definitely one element of it is that social interaction of wanting to not wanting to either not wanting to let someone down or not wanting to not finish in a big enough way to show that you've let people down publicly, kind of thing. So
that's interesting. Yeah. You just reminded me of something. This very spoiled guy that I was taking this course, although I was a Harvard student, I was taking some courses at MIT, and I remember I was in a group of 3 people, and there was one guy on there, a Japanese fellow, and he basically didn't do anything on his project. It was a pretty big project, and I just don't like. He would have let us all down. We would have all failed. And I was motivated, but I do generally think people feel guilty that they don't want to let somebody down. But he was just like such a spoiled guy. Like I remember him telling, like we went at one point to work on it. He's like, "Oh, I'll come and pick you up." So I met him at the parking lot there, at MIT at Harvard, and then we went over and he's like, "Now you're going to see how spoiled I am." First of all, he had a brand new big Mercedes SUV. And then he drove out, that really tall building. It might even be the tallest building downtown Boston there. And he had a penthouse at the top of that. Couldn't believe it. And then we went up there, and at the time it was kind of a big deal. Like he had one of those wireless keyboards, and like he had a huge screen. I'm like, oh man. And yeah, my dad owns a big steel factory in Osaka, I think it was. Like, my God. But some people just like have everything given to them. I'm sure there was a little payola that happened there to get him in. Not like you or me. You or I had to actually work their way through. But I do agree generally, social pressure, like kind of figuring out ways in which you can kind of feel either guilty or also harness shame. Because if you make your goals public,
exactly.
Like they talk about, so people they used to have that thing years ago. Remember, my buddy did it once. That like the weight loss. There's this name, weight loss challenge, and like he was going to do this, and like you make it all public, and you put out pictures of yourself. I'm like, oh my God, you're really going public with that. I don't know. I don't know how I would feel about that. But have you ever done anything like that?
I did, yeah. With a couple of friends, there was an app, and it just sort of like you weighed yourself and you took a picture of the weigh-in kind of thing, and it was successful. I think I ended up losing some weight there, just out of the motivation of, and I mean, like, it was less about kind of like, oh well, I want to weigh less than my friend. It was more like, I want to see that number going down over time, and so that's kind of one element of it is maybe, like it is metrics, right? Things you can track, and because then that leads to something that you can then, you know, put a number on. If you don't weigh yourself and you just kind of say, oh well, I'm feeling gross this today or this week or whatever, you know, like have some objective metric of like, well, I weighed myself, and then I think I tried to always like do it at the same time of day as well. So, you know, before kind of a big meal kind of thing, just so that it wasn't impacted, because your weight can vary, you know, even with keeping hydrated over the day, etc. So
well, that's another thing, because you know, we often talk about, okay, so there are social aspects to motivation, there are psychological aspects to motivation, and there are also biological aspects. You know, some people just are born with a higher set point for motivation, I think. But anyway, there are things that you can do to affect your motivation. And one of them, I think, is, you know, you talk about habits. And I think one of the most important habits is getting into the habit of regularly going to bed at a reasonable time. And I don't know what the optimal time is, but it's probably something like 10 o'clock, and then waking up early. And then I have read recently about getting early morning exposure to sunlight and how important it is. Because some people, I've been trying to tell this to my son, who spends a lot of his time indoors. I'm like, just go out and get some sunlight. And who is it I'm thinking of? Maybe it's Dave Asprey again. I've probably seen two videos by him. It would be funny, but maybe it is him. Anyway, elsewhere as well, like if you get early morning sun, and I can't remember the cutoff, but it's like before 9 o'clock in the morning or something like that, and you look into the sun. Oh, I know who it is. It is sorry to blank out on this, guys. It is the guy, is one of the guys anyway. Jeff Cavalier, who is a big fitness guru on YouTube. And how it's
Huberman's also said something about this.
Huberman, and maybe I'm thinking about Huberman. But it's so, I think you're right. I think it is Huberman. And it's important, right? Because I mean, we've evolved with the sun. I'm trying to tell my son this, is like our evolution is very keyed in with the sun and the air, and you need to be out. And it's like, wow, what's the problem? We've got light inside. Well, no. That's wrecking your circadian rhythm, and God knows what other hormonal imbalances. But I think one of the things that's probably not talked about enough is like your exposure to light can, to a significant degree, help determine your level of motivation. You know, some people have this seasonal affective disorder.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah.
Right, you need to get out, and especially if you live in northern climates. Like we're here coming to you, High Octane Friends, from Canada. Lovely Toronto, Canada. And yes, by the way, to be a true Torontonian, you don't pronounce the second T in Toronto. You actually say Toronto. That's a little too Torontonian for me. But yeah, I mean, getting sleep. This is something on my mind. I want to do that more. But when I lived in Tokyo, I used to routinely, I'd go out. I'd literally stay out all night, and that's not wise.
Yeah.
Maybe when you're like, I don't know, winning something. But, you know, you've probably got lots of energy in it. What about food? What's your thought about food and motivation?
Yeah. It can definitely have an effect. You know, I think if you're eating junk food all the time, it can bring you into those sort of cycles where you're, you know, you're getting all high, sugar high, and then crashing, and it can definitely have an effect. You know, I mean, a lot of people rely on coffee. You don't have to rely on coffee necessarily to kind of like.
Yeah, heroin works fine for me. I don't think.
Yeah, I think it's more cocaine than heroin, honestly.
Yeah, speedballs. I like the speedballs. No, I don't do any of that. But I mean, food is medicine. Food. I mean, I'd even go so far as to say food is a drug. You know, food can have negative impact. And I think I have read before too that sugar is actually as addictive as heroin, as opiates. And it has all sorts of negative health effects. And it's not just the physical. It's like, in my view, having low motivation is a health effect, a negative one, because think about the opportunity cost
Well,
of.
they can be bundled together. You know, if you're not motivated to make food, you're going to result in eating junk, and then that's going to kind of cycle in on itself. So,
Hangry. Well, these jokers at companies that produce things like Snickers, be hungry.
mhm.
Are you hangry? Well, advertising should say, hangry, eat this ultra processed crap,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
to momentarily have a little energy. But then, of course, it traps you in that up and down cycle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think like there are lots of ways of, I mean, if you think about motivation to stay healthy, there are lots of ways of really making very nutritious foods that, and making them appealing to eat, so that you will be motivated to eat them. So or you will have the willpower to sustain not going into that, the pantry for that candy bar or what have you. I think the biggest thing we do in our house is just try to make sure that it's just not in the house, because if we like buy
Yes.
a packet of chips, well then chances are, you're the we know when we're home and like stressed out and whatever, that we're not going to want to resist kind of going into the closet and getting it. So one aspect of willpower is sort of like, setting up the scene so that you have you have the proper place settings to be able to have environment, like have the right environment, right? Shape your surroundings to make good choices easier and bad ones harder.
But it's very hard for some people to do that, and I'll tell you why from personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's often very hard for people to do that who are in relationships, and not to throw my lovely wife under the bus, but for those of you who may or may not know, my wife is Korean, and she has what many East Asian people have, like Koreans, is like has the thinness gene, right? So she can eat all manner of things, but she doesn't have a big appetite, right? So she'll eat small amounts, but she'll buy these snacks. She'll keep them in the car even, and it's exactly as you said. If it's around, I will eat it. I will find it. I will crave it. If it's not there, then I can't sabotage myself. But I try to convince her, like, just please don't buy that crap. But it's a losing battle. I don't know what to do. Like, go and live by yourself.
You can still shape the surroundings to make the good choices easier and the bad ones harder, right? You can sort of in whatever closet that the bad stuff is hidden, you can put a post-it on the outside that says, look, you're gonna need to run however many kilometers if you open this door.
You know what I thought you were gonna say? I thought you were gonna say, if you know where the drawer would is, and I do usually, unless sometimes she has a lot of anyway, I won't go there. She locks some things away, and so I don't go in there. I don't go into her safe. But she does have a junk drawer, one of them, next to the bed. And I thought you were going to say, like, I should leave Post-it notes there, like, you're a bad person. Do not eat this. Do not buy this crap anymore. That's what I would just get yelled at. So, so I don't know. What do you do when you're hangry? So you create your environment. I think food is really, really important. And of course, after agriculture and then the Industrial Revolution, we have all these industrialized foods. Is that the right word? But all these ultra processed foods that it just it leaves you wanting more. It's kind of like you go out for certainly westernized Chinese food here in a city like Toronto, and you go out and you can eat a ton of Chinese food, like noodles and rice and stuff like that, and then like an hour later you're hungry again. Your body does this insulin spike and then drops and then makes you hungry, and then you want to repeat the cycle all over again. But I notice when I eat protein foods like eggs, I don't have that.
I was going to say eggs in the morning. It seems to help me at least to not as opposed to like a bowl of cereal where right away it's like, oh man, I want some more, you know. But a couple of eggs on toast is a good, way to for myself at least to be able to start the day off kind of properly. And I guess another along those same lines, kind of finding the right, or setting things up for success, making sure that you've got some, some salad in the fridge, and because like even just a couple cucumbers and some tomatoes, like cut it up, and then with some dressing, it's great, as a meal. But like if I don't have that there, I think I default to just eating whatever, a burger, you know.
So pre-planning, being prepared.
Yes, exactly.
Maybe like if you make your chili properly, it can be quite nutritious, and not something that'll put you in a food coma. And then maybe you could, or like I think it would be a good idea. I'm gonna try and put my money where my mouth is here and do this this week. And maybe on a Sunday or something, like make a pot of chili or something, and then have some vegetables that just grab and go from the fridge.
Exactly.
It's older now, right? Because so many of us work from home as we do. But I was also going to say, there's a really, really good, really smart, and rather cute to boot. It's the triple threat. That woman from France, I think she's from Paris. And she's a biochemist, I think, and she is known as the glucose queen. Have you heard this woman?
No.
Anyway, so she has I think what's really good advice that's stuck in my head that I try to be mindful of most times, is to have a savory breakfast. So please have a non-sweet breakfast, right? Because like otherwise, and that includes fruit. Like if you were to have sweet fruit, like pineapple, which I adore, she is suggesting that's not a good idea. If you can have those things, have them later on. But yeah, if you start your day with a savory breakfast, and I think something that is high fiber and or high in protein, like eggs, would work, wouldn't they? Like what are those omelets? Florentine omelet or something like that would be a good choice.
Yeah.
But some people just don't think these things are important, right? I don't know what it is, but there's no silver bullet. But I do find when I don't eat any kind of sugary thing, anything that is low in fiber and easily turning into sugar, like bread, particularly white bread, then my energy is higher. But what else can we do? What about the psychology of things? Like how do you really? Because I think about times in my life when I was really motivated. And for example, I think when I was before and during the 5 years or so that I was in Japan, and as an undergrad, I was super motivated.
Yeah.
But what is it?
Well, finding something you're passionate about. I think that I've noticed that certainly, either for myself or with my kids, is that when they are doing something that they're really interested in. I mean, like it's coming up on Halloween, and my son's got an amazing Halloween costume that's like literally a Game Boy with like a functioning screen inside it and buttons and everything. So did Daddy help him with that? Mom did a lion's share of the help getting it all together, because she's got like I helped on the computer side, but she helped with all of the buttons and everything. So and putting the whole box together and everything else. So yeah. So but he's been knocking away at it on the evenings and weekends, and and it's really something that he's into, and so he's taken a huge interest in it. Versus sometimes, whatever French homework or something, sometimes it's a bit of pulling teeth trying to get them to work on it. But even there, you can find tricks, you can say, well, like this can be on any topic. So why don't we pick a topic that you're interested in, like Harry Potter or, something like that. And then, you know, try to find some element of the task that you can be interested in that could help to motivate you, or you can also sort of stagger things. You know, I think I call it precrastination. That I'll put something that I really want to do after something that I have to do. You know, and then it motivates me to kind of get through this mundane task that like I was kind of procrastinating on, but it puts a reward right behind the thing that I need to do. You know, and so I find that can help a lot, just to kind of structure your day, and at the same time, you know, like there's sort of a as I said, sort of like get the environment that, okay, I'm at my desk now, I'm going to do these things that I have to do at my desk, and you know, like just really kind of reduce the barriers to what you're trying to do, and increase the odds of, you know, increase the rewards that come with it. You know, I think someone called it temptation bundling. Pair what you should do with what you want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want to expand on something you said there, which was something that reduce the barriers. And one thing that I'm increasingly doing and trying to do more of is, you know, just kind of setting the expectations low for beginning an activity that you should do or want to do. And so, for example, I'll say, oh, you know, if I want to make a bunch of business calls or something like that, it's like, well, instead of thinking, well, I gotta, you know, do 50 of these or something today, it's like, just, nope, I'm just going to go and I'm going to do 1 minute's worth or something like 1 or 2 minutes worth of calling. And then because you've set the bar so low and it seems so easy, you're not overwhelmed. And so it's easier to begin. But the thing is, there's momentum in which you're going. So you may very well do more than that 1 minute. So I would say that. I would also suggest, like, for younger people, because I think motivation is a huge issue. I know we've seen this in our family with our young son, but well, he's not that young. He's 20 now, but he's got more responsibilities. But I think what I was going to say there is not only minimize barriers to doing stuff, but minimize distractions. Because young people, or people in general these days, are inundated with all sorts of distractions, whether it be TV, or are you going to watch the World Series tonight? Or which is fine because that's rare. Or, you know, just, I was watching my kid the other day, and we were out to dinner somewhere, and just it was Instagram, and just like scrolling. It was actually making me nauseous watching it, because it's just constant movement. And I'm not like that. Like, if I read something online, I'm not doing that typically, although sometimes I do a LinkedIn, but it's like, I will read long form articles, but they are not there. Like, I can't imagine in 10 years, say something like theeconomist.com will be too well subscribed to by the up and coming business types, because they will be too used to doing this constantly. So I don't know what that means. And, you know, once you become an adult, it's, you know, you've got no one to really stop you from doing that. So it really comes down to you. So I don't know what that is. Is like is there kind of a moment of epiphany or terror that causes you, or, you know, things get so bad? And maybe that's where we're headed as a society in general. Like, things are just going to get so shitty, to be crude. After a while, like all this nonsense, kind of geopolitical nonsense, without naming names, you know, things just going to get so bad necessarily before they get better. I don't know. What do you think about that? And the same with young people and distraction. And
I mean, attention and young people is definitely a concern, you know, and I notice it, with my kids. They won't even finish watching, like, they'll be watching YouTube videos, and they won't even finish watching something, and just by the time I've gotten interested in it, they've already moved on. So it's like, wait a second, what's happening? So I think definitely, you know, it's something that will come with kind of experience, and they are able to to still pay attention in class and that sort of stuff. And I mean, there are certainly ways that you can help them with that by, making sure that maybe encouraging them to read. What's that?
Tie them to the chair and like Clockwork Orange, like have this
Yeah.
in their eyes.
Yeah. Well, I think like encouraging them to either read or listen to an audiobook, because that's something that like requires long-term kind of listening and paying attention. And, I think a lot of my kids thankfully are quite into books. Even games, my kids were playing chess the other night, and it was great to see them like sitting down and like sort of concentrating. And there are definite ways you can encourage that. I'm not perhaps as pessimistic as you about the downfall of society.
I am a bit pessimistic right now about that in particular. Yeah. I mean, I hope and I kind of expect. See, those are weasel words, but I kind of expect that at some point we'll solve it. But I think we're in a really bad way. Like, we haven't had social media that long. And it's almost like it could be a lost generation or two before we start getting back up again. I mean, kudos to you. I'm sure some of that, the fact that your children like books is due to you and your wife, but it's hard. It's hard to encourage people if they don't have that habit to read. I'm not even sure, like at the university level much anymore, like how much are they actually reading books? I always quietly, think, what's the word I'm looking for? I always kind of quietly cheer if I get on the subway or the bus here in Toronto, for example, and I see a young person reading a book, meaning like a young adult or a teenager. I'm like, yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they'd just be on their phones.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but I definitely noticed like everyone zombified to their phone, and either flicking or playing, some game on their phone to pass the time when they're thing. And have you heard of the latest thing, which is like called raw dogging flights, which is like you don't bring a phone or anything, and you just sit in your chair for the full like the flight with nothing to look at.
Well, that's interesting. Is that a trend?
It's sort of it's a
challenge?
YouTube, TikTok, whatever trend of like, people are proud of themselves for, like not bringing anything to entertain them with them on this like flight for however many hours.
Or their phone or their battery just died, or they left it in their suitcase.
Yeah. No, but it's sort of intentionally like staying away from stuff. And you know what I mean, like what I do sometimes when I'm on a flight, maybe I'll bring a bunch of stuff with me, but I'll start chatting with the person next to me, and then like next thing you know, like we've landed. And I relish the opportunity. Maybe that's just the extrovert in me to like to just chat with someone and find out what they're working on, and like maybe not for the whole flight, but for certainly a percentage of the time. Like, well, we're going to be stuck here sitting next to each other anyways. And particularly I think once I was going to a scientific conference, and I think a lot of the other people were going to the same place, and so I got into a great conversation with this guy who was like doing some. I saw him reading some scientific paper, and then we got chatting, and it was great to sort of understand what they're working on, and like, oh, maybe I'll come by your poster, all that sort of stuff. So
yeah. Well, of course that requires some level of extroversion in both people. But I agree with you. I think that's good. The problem is that people decreasingly give you the chance to even break into a conversation with them because they're looking down, which is a bit sad. Yeah. Well, not to be negative about it, but what if you're one of those persons that is, relatively aware of their low motivation and their bad habits, they're distracted by their phone, or they don't eat well, or they have a vague sense. It's like I'm not doing
That's
enough of
me
what
on
I
a
need
Tuesday.
to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you do? Like
Uh,
how do you motivate yourself? How do you get yourself up? I used to
mm,
say to my business partner years ago, we used to do a lot of seminars and stuff. I'm like, okay, we'd spend a lot of money, time, and energy on getting people out to these seminars. This is when I was still an investment advisor before I sold my practice to him. And it was like, how do we get people out to these investment seminars? Like, really, really coddled rich people who high net worth and ultra high net worth people who were going after. And, you're in your nice, lovely home on your beautiful couch and you got all your distractions, like your television, your Netflix or whatever. How do you get people to come up? I mean, you can go up and up and up to the highest end of the restaurant. Even that's not necessarily going to do it. But what would be the thing or things that get you out? Like I remember one time we actually hired a comedian. This was actually our most successful one. We hired a comedian to open the seminar. We had a meal. We did a really nice restaurant. And before he and I got out there to talk about our investment philosophy in the market and all this kind of stuff,
yep.
we hired a comedian to poke fun at the investment industry.
Oh, nice.
He ended up making some inappropriate jokes. And I remember looking over, I was having a great time, but I remember looking over at my business partner and he was like just horrified. But anyway, it worked out okay. He was worried that some of the guests would have been offended, which they likely were, but they forgot it. But I remember saying to him all the time, like, how do we get these people off the couch?
Yeah.
Short of being able to hire Warren Buffett to come out and be a co-presenter.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. How do you get other people off the couch? I know for myself, the thing that often will do it is just, try to have milestones and deadlines. Like give yourself some. I'm sure everyone's got external deadlines that they need to deal with, but like set yourself some goals of like, what do I want to be doing in 5 years from now? And, and then work backwards to kind of like, what do I need to do tomorrow to advance that, that plan, that kind of big picture plan that I have for myself. What do I need to accomplish in the next, 15, 18 hours that's going to get those things done. Right. And that was actually something I saw, whatever the Mr. Wonderful, the Kevin O'Leary guy was, there was a who, I don't know, I have certain thoughts on him, but
I have no good thoughts on him.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things he was saying is that like he had worked for Steve Jobs at some point, like Jobs had bought his educational whatever thing that he was doing, and he said like he was one example of someone who kind of had a very high filter for like signal to noise, and so he looked at like all of the things he had to do in the next 18 hours, and he picked out like the 3 or 5 things that he really needed to nail down to advance whatever his ultimate goal was, and then he made sure he executed on those, and so it's sort of like if you can drill it down to look, I'm okay, I'm having trouble exercising. Well, do you want to lose weight in time for that big wedding that's coming up? Well, if you want to lose weight by that time, well, look, it takes, I don't know what the healthy weight loss is, like a pound a week or something like that. And whatever the rate is, like if you work backwards from where you want to be to where you are now, and you figure that out. And if you can't, then that's not going to happen. And so it is whatever it is. But like, I think being able to kind of structure your life that way. And I mean, sometimes some people go to the extent of, I think Steve Jobs, I think used to have this story of like, he always thought the next, like, I think if you live every day like it's your last, at one point you'll be right. I think. Yeah,
he did a lot of extreme things, Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
Interesting, very smart guy. I don't know if you ever read the Walter Isaacson biography of him, which was very interesting.
Yes.
But I left rather. I mean, I've since come to appreciate him more again. But after having read that book, I was a bit disillusioned with him because, he didn't come across, at least through that portrayal, as a very nice guy at all.
No,
Like
no.
he would publicly fire people in rooms, and he was not nice to his daughter Lisa, and all these kinds of things. But he was kind of extreme in many ways. He created an extremely successful business. He before he, at one point, he was on a fruitarian. He was a fruitarian.
Oh yeah.
Or he was only eating carrots, and he ate so many carrots he turned orange. But I wonder if we're going to get anytime soon to the point where, if you lack external discipline, like someone to hold you in line, like a parent, or a boss, or a wife, a spouse, I'm guessing someone's going to come up with like AI disciplinarians, like a robot tells you what you got to do, don't you think? Mm-hmm. But we're not there yet. But it makes sense. I like the idea of lowering barriers to make things easier, because we're all faced with so many rules anyway, right? And that might be part of it. We kind of have this. What's the word? We're just becoming a little tired of all the rules, all the information, all the distractions. So get rid of your distractions.
Yeah. I'd get rid of them, or like partition them off somewhere, or look, I'm just going to deal with, I'm going to narrow my focus to deal with the things that kind of are within my sphere of control, and see what I can do to get something done on those in the time frame that I have, because I think a lot of times what can demotivate me is sort of like catastrophizing about oh my God, the world's falling apart, and
yes.
This and that and the next. And it's kind of none of those are directly under your control. And so you can worry about the economy all you want, but it's not necessarily going to change anything. What will change things is, what can I do to advance either getting the next job, or finding some funding for my business, or, something else that can actually have a positive net impact that can move the needle forward on whatever it is that I'm, that will make me feel better about whatever it is that I'm worrying about, So
I'm going to suggest to you and I,
mm-hmm.
as well as to our listeners presently and in future, that, think right away today, what is at least one thing that you can remove, to remove a worry, which may require kind of a re-rationalization of things. It's like, am I irrationally worrying about this? Is there anything I can do about it? And, or am I too worried about it? And I do tend to be like that. Because I'm interested in world affairs and all that kind of stuff. And, my wife tells me this quite a lot. It's like, why are you worrying about that? And I've gone through this once before. I went through it after 9/11, because, I've often been too much of a news junkie, and then 9/11 happened, and I was glued to all the TVs and then I started to like the world's going down the tubes, and you need to actually put it in perspective. As awful and truly awful as 9/11 and all those bad things that happened on that day, in the grand scheme of things, and let's be honest, we are very self-centered here in North America, and dare I say even more so in the United States, because they get so much attention, because it is the biggest certainly in the English world, right? They're the biggest English-speaking population and the biggest economy, etc. So naturally, they get a lot of attention, and they can, if you don't fight it, some people can become very insular, and so they catastrophize things more than what they are. Whereas, perhaps if you talk to somebody in Bangladesh, where it seems like there's a natural disaster every few months, to be on a very, it almost seems like a heartless level. I don't mean it this way, but 3,000 to 5,000 people that died in that, and all the things that happened from that. You compare that to any natural disaster outside of the Western world that happens almost on a weekly basis. We need to put it in perspective. So one of the things that helped me after that, because I was just getting so drawn into it, it's like I started to worry okay, is this going to lead to a nuclear war? And then I actually tried to rationalize it, and it helped me to think about what the worst case scenario would be. And the conclusion I came to is like the worst case scenario, and this is super, super horrible, but it is the worst case scenario that I thought would reasonably have a chance of happening. That would be that somebody gets a dirty bomb or a nuclear weapon, and they blew up New York City or Chicago or some major city. And that's horrible, no doubt. But, I came to the conclusion that's the worst that could ever happen. Even that is not likely to happen. It's not likely to happen. Everything's just going to go to shit. So therefore, maybe stop worrying about it, right? First of all, there's nothing I can do. Mm-hmm. And then I started to reduce my news consumption because oftentimes it's designed to do this, but sometimes it just kind of takes on this pattern of increasingly sensationalizing the news. I saw something that you just shared on LinkedIn. I happened before we got on our recording today. It was something you shared about how somebody created a social network purely with AI bots, responding to each other.
Yes.
They didn't pre-program the algorithm or anything. It naturally bubbled up that everyone kind of went into tribes and it was fighting the different bots. Yes. Right? It was fascinating.
Yeah.
And I don't know. What do you take from that? I want to ask you about that.
Well, I think it's reinforcing, I think what we've said several times on this podcast, which is that with the news, if it bleeds, it leads. And, monetizing attention and monetizing eyeballs does not necessarily make for informative, well-adjusted news. It makes for people yelling at each other from either sides of whatever, dividing line that they're on. I had a really great course in college that was liberalism and conservatism, and it talked about both kind of the historical origins of it, but also that these dividing lines that we're so kind of dead set on as those Democrats or those Republicans, they're the devil. If you zoom out and look at the globe and all of the all of the different belief systems and everything else, those are very, very tiny lines on this on this spectrum of Western democratic values. And and so people get so hung up on the most minute differences in their belief systems, but or there was something else. I think as soon as the other thing that was, as soon as when the civil rights era kind of happened, and they realized that the Republicans realized they needed something else to sort of latch onto, and that's when the abortion debate sort of sprung up as here's this topic that we know that conservative Christians are going to latch onto as something that's very important.
Bring them together.
Bring them over from from something that was now no longer kind of socially acceptable to believe in differences in race and stuff, into something that was that could still justify, well, that's why I'm supporting the Republican Party, even though they don't do anything for poor people, et cetera, et cetera. So so I think it's, and again, there's all of these sorts of things that are happening all the time that are manipulating us into wanting to do either whether it's buy certain things or et cetera, or keep watching these TikToks over and over and over.
People think they're people. I was going to say people think they're informing themselves. They think they're getting more and more knowledge, but they're not. They're just getting more and more.
You're getting whatever the algorithm wants to feed you, or whatever that particular news station wants to feed you.
Yeah,
and and it's not necessarily. It's not going to make you more any more informed necessarily. It's just going to it's most likely going to reinforce your beliefs. So I think getting out and challenging your beliefs by speaking to people that have different views than you do, is actually one thing that, as tough as it is to do, can give you a different perspective than just whatever talking points are being shouted at us from whatever microphones. And I mean, like we're moving a little bit further away from motivation, but I think along the lines of people getting demotivated by seeing negative stuff in the news. Well,
it is demotivating.
It is. Yeah.
Because
But
you start, like, I'm generally, naturally kind of an optimistic person, but I am becoming a little more worried than ever, and I hope it does resolve itself. I don't know how that's going to happen. I do suspect that it's one of these things which I almost want to say it's a truism, right? That repeats itself, which is that things will need to get much worse before they get better, which sadly might mean some sort of war.
Well, I mean, we're in it right now. I mean, like, Trump has just threatened to raise tariffs another 10%, because he saw a advertisement he didn't like, that was put out by the government of Ontario that was quoting that literally did not change Reagan's words one bit, quoted him line for line. Okay, they rearranged some of what he said, but
well, it's not just Reagan. I mean, Republicans and conservatives in the West for ages have been pro-free trade.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah. Anyways, like, there's an additional 10% tariff now. And what is, hand wringing, what is that going to do? It's like, well, what, rather than listen to kind of what the talking heads are, like, I'd much rather maybe just talk to a local business owner and say to them, hey, what do you think is going to happen? And they'll, give me at least some sort of objective, response that for better or worse, like, we'll get through it kind of thing, and, I think it's again, and we're going to, I think, filtering what you consume, filtering what you even writing down your concerns, but like, here's what okay, I'm worried about this right now, like, journal about it, but then say, okay, but right now I need to get these 3 things done, because that's something that I need to, get to sort of move on to the next thing. And this brings up something that I was going to say, which is learn to say no. Learn to say no to things, because your life can get so easily filled up by if it's like a coworker, oh, hey, can you help me out with this? Or someone wants you to volunteer, someone wants you to do this. Learning to kind of say no, and like, no, I'm not going to do that right now. I need to, get through whatever it is I'm getting through, is very important. And it's something that I've certainly could still learn how to better say no to people that are asking me to do stuff, because you do only have limited willpower, limited motivation and willpower in your day. And there are only so many hours, and you can only get through so many things. And even for myself, sometimes I'll force myself to stay up late, and then I'll be kind of just not very motivated the next day, just because my sleep schedule's thrown off. Versus like, well, okay, I'm going to get up, at 8 or whatever, and I'm going to start right away, and I'm going to have some concrete things done by this time period that is going to be better than staying up late and not really getting it done, and that sort of thing. So yeah.
Well, I mean, people get overwhelmed. They don't plan their days right. This is one of the emerging themes of this conversation, I would say, in my mind at least, is planning, right?
Yes.
Plan
yes.
day. Plan when you're
for success. Yes.
When you're going to go to bed, when you're going to eat, what things you're going to do, and conversely not do.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to add something. You said a couple of things that I wanted to just tack on the things. One was like, you want to filter certain things, but you also want to filter how you react.
Yes.
You will try and not react in such a negative way.
Yep.
Being positive. If you generally, if you could somehow figure out a way to be 10% more positive, I would strongly suggest actually that you would be more motivated.
There's an actual book, 10% Happier. And it's I'm blanking on the guy's name. He was a he was a journalist, and then he got really into motivation or into meditation. So let me look him up. Yeah, but
well, there's a really
Dan Harris. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds familiar.
So
yeah.
It's a meditation app and focus on making meditation mindfulness accessible, especially to skeptics. So,
well, we've got an upcoming guest, right?
Yes.
Who Deep is going to be talking. One of the things, he's a very successful entrepreneur who's also going to be talking about meditation, and he does a lot of that. So he'll help us with that. And some of meditation is calming down. You're becoming less emotional. And I wrote down here, you want to do more to rationalize over emotionalize things, right? Of course, the algorithms, the media is there to sensationalize things, or it just naturally happens that way. But you have to fight back against that and rationalize it and realize things are not as bad. Like that piece of news, like even if you watch the local news, like in Toronto, if you watch the local news, like City TV is the worst. Like those kind of local news channels are the worst because, it's like, it's a lovely young mother and her 3 children, went off a cliff. I'm like, I don't want to see that. It's awful. And you see it so often, but in the greater Toronto area, there's like 7 or 8 million people, and maybe that happens. I don't know if it happens every day, but there seems to be a lot. Or, someone was killed in a car accident. Of course, that's horrible, and I sympathize. But you put it into context. In a city, it's so big. They're just chasing the bad news, unfortunately. It's cheap crap content. And so if we can rationalize this and put it in perspective, like, this is very low.
Yeah. I mean, and I've tried to, where I can, substitute, rather than sort of turning on and watching the news, I'll try and listen to something that's just, like, again, a Huberman podcast or something that has some value. Actually, the Y Combinator podcast is great.
I was not aware of that.
And it's kind of the 2 guys that are running Y Combinator right now. And particularly if you're anywhere related to startups, like it's just got fantastic stuff. They talk about kind of like startups that they've seen succeed. There's all different elements of like what goes into building a good SaaS company, and so it's something that I can have on in the background. I don't necessarily have to pay attention to, but it's not like, oh, Trump did this or Trump did that. Here's something that is positive, like that you are learning as you are listening to this. So yeah.
Well, I mean, I believe some of it is by design, at least initially, and now it's habitual for him. And I think he's very clever in this, frankly, or at least was. And that, he tries to keep people off balance. I think, the intimidation of countries like Canada or Denmark or whatever. And now, to think, like, honestly, in my view, to think that he's like called off trade talks with Canada because, the Premier of Ontario put in that. No, that's an excuse. That's not.
It was going to happen anyways. Exactly.
Yeah, and like I think I read something the other day that I totally agreed with, and they said, Canadians saw this, and there is largely a collective shrug. It's like, what the hell? We'll get on with our lives, yes. And in the end, like you and I both have tons of American friends. We both went to school there and worked there, and or I did anyway, and we have so many lovely American friends, and so many of them are so terrific. And are not happy with the direction of the country, even on either side of the political divide, actually.
Yep.
But I think that, this division is what's helping certain politicians, right? Because like, you get people.
Exactly.
A nice word, a non-pejorative word is passionate. Some would say crazy, you know.
Yeah.
If you're passionate about something, then you're going to.
Well, division demotivates people to do anything about it, right? And so that's it's sort of if you can get people fighting on these different sides of these fine lines, then they're not going to, you know, kind of come together and say, hey, we want to.
Right.
You guys need to do something about climate change.
But they will vote
here, you know. They will, yes, they will vote according to whatever interest you've spiked by this division. And I mean, like, it's so blatant nowadays that, particularly with the election cycles as they are in the States, that you know, like, I remember, you remember the caravan thing? So like right before. I think it was Obama's second election or something. There was caravans of migrants are crossing the border, and then the election happened, and then the day after the election, nothing about you know, it was all just this
manufactured
this storm of manufactured outrage that you know, got everyone speaking, and then as soon as the election concluded and Obama won a second term, then it went away, and so it's just so obvious, you know, looking back, that you can see all of these things, and so I think the extent to which you can stay, you know, the extent to which you can curate your, I would say just be aware that algorithms are feeding you stuff all the time, and to the extent you can train those algorithms to feed you the stuff that you want, you know, try and do that. So on Twitter nowadays, I only ever respond and follow things that are talking about either investments or about like science or research, and I, you know, ignore the 30 Elon Musk tweets that are promoted because he's made the algorithm promote his stuff, and everything else. And I just you know, I'm aware, just as the food we eat has an effect on our motivation, the you know, the sort of stuff we take in also has that effect. So I think really being able to be intentional about your media consumption habits, you know, can have a big effect on whether or not you feel motivated to, you know, tackle the challenges that either you face in your day-to-day or the greater challenges you face in the world. Because if you keep getting told, oh, well, the world's going to hell and, you know, nothing you can do can change that, well, you're not going to be very motivated to kind of go out there and, you know, maybe apply to college or something. But if you look at, okay, well, what are going to be the new, what are fields that I'm truly interested in, and focus on that and read about that, you know, and maybe you want to do some retraining in, as an AI engineer or something like that, you know, like, read about like what AI can do nowadays and what sorts of things, what sorts of career opportunities exist, and talk to people that are in those jobs, and, you know, find a way to motivate yourself to get that certification or whatever it is, you know, because that's going to help. That's going to help a lot more than sitting around and, oh, well, AI is going to take all of our jobs, and not really. You know, I think I saw something today where they were saying like AI is not going to take nearly as many jobs as like everyone's predicting it's going to, because it's just structurally, like, that's not how it works, you know. And well,
there's also, without making this the subject of this now, but I've read in a few places through a few credible sources, you know, people talking about how these models, these large language models, these generative AI models, for example, are, you know, they're absolutely dependent upon data and the constant flow, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And so the data sources are becoming more expensive or being shut off from these LLMs, which, originally, to a large extent, they were just scraping the likes of Reddit and whatnot, and to get this information, which tells you something about why a lot of it is inaccurate. So there's that. And people now are just much more aware that their data is out there. And so they're locking down their data more. And so, the decrease in the amount of data, the decrease in the veracity, the truth of the data, the accuracy of the data, altogether, as time goes on through, I guess, machine learning, these models tend to generate less and less accurate information, to the point where you may actually get some degree of model collapse, perhaps not complete, but it'll get to the point where like the inaccuracy will grow. And so I suspect that may happen, right? Or we're certainly going to reach an apogee for, how good an LLM model is. I suspect that's the case. And we're just going through that. We're learning.
But, I think, you've frozen for a second, but
including ourselves, to be more motivated is like, be intentional, for example, about your day, and plan your day. Be intentional about what you consume. Try to be more rational. Whoops.
You had froze for a bit, but you're back. Yeah.
Okay, I'm back. Yes, I took a trip to Mars. And plan. I think plan things. Yeah. We didn't talk about surrounding yourself with motivated people. We all know in our lives,
absolutely,
that's probably helpful.
Yeah. No, I think you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and so if you can make sure to, spend more time with people that are really motivated and that accomplish, not only motivated, but like that have systems and kind of things that keep them going. Like motivation gets you started, but systems and identity kind of keeps you going. So identify yourself as the kind of person who does a thing. I'm the kind of person who doesn't miss workouts. I'm the kind of person who completes things under whatever time frame. And then surround yourself with people that also are like that. You will learn their good habits, and you will maybe understand a bit more some of your bad habits and how you might be able to change those. So because the converse of that is, if you surround yourself with people who have very low motivation and have poor habits and things that lead you astray in so many ways, like they're if you're just with your buddies, like playing games all the time virtually, or you're always watching Netflix, then that's probably going to lead you down the wrong path. Or you always go to bed late. Those things go hand in hand, by the way, I've noticed. So, my son is a great kid, but like all of us, none of us are perfect. Except my wife seems to be too close to that for my comfort. But my son will stay up really late and he'll be playing games with his buddies, and that starts off a whole host of problems. But okay, well, hopefully, as we like to say, you've got at least one gem from this audience today. Trevor and I having talked about motivation. We didn't talk about willpower per se, which is more enduring things, but I do think, again, they're related. So maybe this is something we can continue on another episode where we get an expert, because of course it's mostly just Trevor and I musing about these things. But it brings to top of mind for you that it's something that you need to do. So I encourage everybody to maybe go to bed early tonight, wake up a little earlier tomorrow, get some sunshine, eat properly, avoid sugar, have as the glucose queen says, have a savory breakfast. So put down the Danish wherever you are, and that should serve you pretty well. That's a good place to start. And maybe give your friend, we all have those friends that are like, man, that guy's really motivated. Maybe see if you can work your way back into their life. Learn a tip or two. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for joining us on High Octane Friends. If you have a comment or suggestion, please do so. And of course, we'd love for you to subscribe. That would be great. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks, Trevor.
Thank you.